Thank you. Welcome, everybody, and it really is a pleasure to be here to help celebrate the 60th anniversary of ILAR. ILAR has been and continues to be an extraordinarily important part of the Division on Earth and Life Studies. Particularly if you look historically at the way ILAR became developed and the importance of animal research in the history of biology, the history of medicine, and the continuing importance of animal research in biology and medicine. This is a very central activity and an extremely important one, and one that has a public face. So it is indeed a pleasure to be here. What I'm going to do is talk a little bit about how ILAR sits in the National Research Council, and then go over a little bit of the history of it. So ILAR is part of the NRC, the National Research Council, and the National Research Council is part of the National Academy of Sciences, at least one of the components of it. And the National Academy of Sciences was established actually by Congress in President Lincoln's time in order to provide scientific advice to the government whenever asked. And the idea was that the elected members of the NAS would provide that knowledge. Well, very quickly it became clear that the members themselves didn't have the breadth of expertise, and then in 1960 the National Research Council was established to really begin to bring people together. And do we have a clicker here? Oops, right, could have bit me. So the National Research Council's major function is to provide scientific advice to the U.S. government, and we are a unique organization because we are not part of the government. We're independent. We get no set funds from the government. We have a number of characteristics that make us unique. One is because we are the National Academy of Sciences, we have a unique convening ability. And I think those of you that are sitting here are a great example of that unique convening ability. We can, on any topic, bring in the best in the United States to talk about something, to give us advice. And so no matter whether it is laboratory animals, climate change, or the levels of arsenic in drinking water, we can bring the nation's experts to weigh in on that. Another unique aspect of what we do is that our reports and our products are supposed to be timely, authoritative, state-of-the-art, and objective, and we provide objective advice. We do this without using opinions. We need to be impartial, and that again is very important, and that is why the government and why state governments and why foundations turn to us repeatedly, because of the expert advice, the high level of advice, and the tremendous effort that's made through our various processes of both convening committees and reviewing the products that make things impartial. So, and one of the most important aspects, of course, is maintaining this impartiality. So ILAR has a number of different missions, and very, very important, and this is taken from its mission statement. It evaluates information related to the scientific, technological, and ethical use of animals. This is a really complicated landscape when you think about it. It's a very sensitive landscape. We have animal rights groups that are very interested in what goes on and what is recommended. We have large companies as constituents and small research groups. We have government agencies, we have academics, and all of these different organizations and different stakeholders, in fact, interact to produce the products of ILAR. Another aspect, and one of the major principles, is the principle of refinement, reduction, and replacement, the 3 R's. This means that there's a sense of making things better, of reducing the use of animals, and when possible, replacing animal model systems. And we've had a number of products from ILAR where ILAR has contributed, and also some of the other boards at the NRC have worked very hard on this. I think a good example is the one of the reports that's referred to in the agenda here in your program booklet, and that is toxicity testing in the 21st century, a vision and a strategy. And that was a desire to really reduce the use of animal models and replace it with cell lines and some of the kinds of techniques that have been used by genomics. We have reports, we produce reports from expert committees that many of you are familiar with, the ILAR Journal, and also some web-based resources, and I'll talk a little bit more about those. And again, the purpose to objective advice. So there's just a little bit of the history of ILAR. It was actually fascinating reading. The history began a little bit before 1952. There were a group of veterinarians in Chicago affiliated with various universities, medical schools, and they all were dealing with the same issue. And that was, in order to do at that point cutting-edge biology and biomedical research, you needed to have animal resources. And so they created a group of them to begin to try to understand and to work with each other to develop these animal resources. They were looking at setting standards, and they were very instrumental in forming other organizations that, for example, American College of Laboratory Animal Medicine, so deeply involved. And this led to the community-wide conference that requested the NRC to create a committee on animal resources. So really procuring animals and doing it in a way that provided high-quality animals and consistent quality. In 1953, there was the formation in the NRC of the Institute of Animal Resources, which ultimately became ILAR. And their very first report in 1956 was Parasitic and Infectious Diseases of Laboratory Animals. And this was a very interesting report because it was the first compendium in 30 years of the diseases that affected laboratory animals. Subsequent to that, the whole committee was changed, and the name was changed to ILAR, the committee that it has now, and then the name it has now. And then subsequently, there was a request to the NCI, the National Cancer Institute, to develop minimum standards for the commercial production of inbred and random bred mice. And it also called for accreditation of organizations and groups that produces mice for research. Other milestones. In 1956, ILAR was a founding voice for the International Committee on Laboratory Animals, and so the reach of ILAR became international. And then early in 1960s, laboratory animal medicine became a recognized specialty field. And then in 1963, tremendously important, the first guide for laboratory animal facilities and care by the Animal Care Panel. And this is, of course, the guide that we're all familiar with. And right now in 2010, we had the 8th edition of that. And this, of course, is extraordinarily important because it provides it provides guidance and that allows the harmonization of animal care, and it provides guidance to government regulations. Subsequently, in '79, there was a lot of interest in providing guidance for animals for research, and there was additional work on establishing reliable sources of animals. So at this very early work really focused on making sure that there was the foundation for biological and medical research. Subsequent, of course, there was a tremendous interest in animal welfare, and that really has added to ILAR's mission. So ILAR's contributions are manifold. They're science-based studies and translations into many different languages. And your program has a list of some of the really influential studies that ILAR has done. In addition to the guide, there's a recent one on chimpanzees and research strategies for the ethical care, management, and use of chimpanzees. This was one where I think it was spearheaded by the Institute of Medicine with ILAR participation and assistance. This was one where I think of all the things that the NRC has done, they got the most comments on. So tremendously hot button issues. Guidelines for the care and use of mammals in neuroscience and behavioral research. Particularly now, we have new models of zebrafish, and so if you look at one of the current issues of the ILAR journal, it talks a lot about zebrafish, their diseases, and the health of zebrafish. So the guide, again, tremendously significant, and it's been translated as of lately into 11 different languages, so extremely important in providing uniformity across the globe for animal care. ILAR Journal talks about issues that are related to animal care and to the overseeing the use of animals in research and providing standards for the kinds of animals in research. ILAR also produces a national and international workshops, and many of these have been really seminal in terms of moving the whole field of animal care forward. and again, a leader in sharing global resources. And then there's also a very important website, and what this does is it has a search engine, and it provides access to animal models and genetic stocks as database, and so that it allows someone who's interested in a particular animal model system to use that search engine and to find that animal. So extremely central to what we do. And then finally, last, we have something that's very exciting, and that's going to be the establishment very soon of a roundtable on science and welfare in laboratory animal use. And the goal of this is to foster communication among representatives of many constituencies with interest in laboratory animals. That includes government agencies and pharmaceutical companies, vendors, animal advocacy groups, professional societies, and academic institutions. And I think one of the things that's really important is the infusion of the concern that we have for laboratory animals into the way that laboratory animals are treated, and into the guidelines. And that's been something that I think has been a very important response to the public, just as the very early response was from the scientific community really wanting ILAR to be established and for guidelines to be established. So one of the hallmarks of ILAR, I think, has been this response to its constituency, whether that be the public or whether it be the scientific community. The roundtable is going to provide a balanced and civil forum to stimulate dialogue. Because some of the issues associated with laboratory animals are contentious, and because there are very polarized views sometimes, what our roundtables do, not only in ILAR but in general in the NRC, it provides a neutral forum where you can bring people with many different backgrounds together and provide them, if you will, a safe harbor where they can have conversations and begin to understand each other's views. It's a very, very important function when you have really diverse communities. So the forum is going to stimulate dialogue, and the hope is to really build trust and understanding and transparency among these different constituencies. So it's a very exciting development. Various activities that the roundtable could produce. It could develop scoping meetings. It can commission white papers, and it can also host workshops and webinars. So these are some of the functions that we see this new roundtable undertaking. Possible topics, I mean, there's many, many different topics, but one that's of concern is transportation of laboratory animals, and that's something that many people are concerned about. I mean, if you have a pet, you worry about the transportation. So it's an international, it's not only a U.S. issue, but it's a critical international policy issue as well. Comments about the value of animal models and the appropriate applications of animal models. When is it appropriate to use animals? When is it appropriate to use some other model system? Improvement of data sharing with, and particularly data sharing when there's negative results and things don't work. That's something as in general the scientific community does rather poorly, is to proliferate the negative results. And it would probably save all of us in every one of our careers some time had we known what other people had tried and didn't work. Design, implementation, monitoring of performance standards, another topic that would be possible to undertake. And then finally one that would be providing some kind of help and maybe some bullet points and some understanding about navigating the regulatory landscape, something that I think every field has to be concerned about. So with that, that's kind of a brief run-through of ILAR. It's been terrific. We've watched it really evolve, and I've been chair of the DELS for, this is my 6th year of that, and we've seen transitions. We've seen terrific new studies. We've seen the ILAR journal be moved over to Oxford University Press. They were interested in maintaining it and really becoming the publisher where it used to be published by our National Academy presses. And so there's been this real evolution as science changes, as our use of animal models change. ILAR has changed, and ILAR also has responded, I think, beautifully to its constituencies. So with that, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.